Initially intended to be anaesthesia post-COVID, but that's a little bit of a moot point now, isn't it, given where we are? And the situation or the status of it is changing so rapidly that, in fact, some of these slides, which I only finalised last night, are already out of date in a sense, and I'll show you or talk about you through why in a minute. So here's a personal selection of thoughts of some of the current issues. It's by no means an exhaustive description of every issue that's coming up, and I'm sure there'll be lots of things that I have raised that you may want to talk about or just think about. Undoubtedly, COVID has reset how national organisations work on behalf of their members in terms of the association or in behalf of their charter and the fellows who pay subscriptions to the college and other organisations. And we've all had to do things differently, and we're learning all the time what to do and how to represent people. And some of the issues I'll raise are things that we're currently representing the profession on. But in terms of what we've done relating to the pandemic, the association has put on, as you know, I'm sure, quite a lot of free webinars. We have our 13th on Saturday morning, which is about getting back to work. I'll show you that in a second. They've been watched by a huge number of people, over 50,000 views, and by 18,000 different people who can watch them either online at the time or afterwards. We've offered some complimentary membership to people who are returning to anaesthesia. So I think Jonathan Mole took this up. So people who are coming back who are retired or had left anaesthesia for any other reason, we allow them to join for free so they could get access, particularly to the educational content, just for the duration of the pandemic. Journal thought that they would struggle to get a copy of submissions, and in fact, submissions have doubled during the time of the pandemic. So a lot of it has been papers about the pandemic, and we published 73, as you can see, but other submissions as well. So maybe people who have had a bit of extra time in other respects have taken the opportunity to finish off that project they had. Maybe they've just been stimulated by the pandemic to do some academic work. I don't know, but there's been a huge rise. And we've appointed some new editors, one of whom you all know very well, Professor Moppet, who we've managed to poach from the BJA. And the website, which I'll come on to in a minute, has had a huge number of visitors, and we've done a lot of social media. So we are learning, organisations are learning how to communicate with members in a different way. And this hub was set up between these four bodies, the ICS, FICM, ourselves, and the Royal College, to be a one single source, or one-stop shop, if you will, of information related to the pandemic. And I only put at the bottom that maybe it was too much of a good thing in one way. There's 50 new documents, a huge number of visitors, and as you see, over 1 million page views. And there has been, hasn't there, criticism of this and lots of other sources of information for the volume, the tsunami almost of documents and of guidelines and of protocols and of all sorts of things. And I see a good chance of that returning in the current wave as information is updated. So it's good or bad. I suppose it's whether your cup's half full or your cup is half empty. And certainly the changing guidelines around PPE issued by various organisations, which the hub tried to interpret, was the main source of that confusion. And I suppose the corollary now is the different guidelines or restrictions rather around the country related to local lockdowns that if they try and make it too specific, that people then criticise. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think the hub will continue. There was a suggestion over the summer that maybe it should be wound up, but obviously in light of the current situation, it's going to continue. So we've tried to put on some free webinars, and the latest one is will be tomorrow. Here are some that we've done in the last few weeks, and they're all available to access for free via our website. You can click on them and watch them. They've been recorded. Some of them obviously have been updated or have passed their time. The ones talking about guidance, for example, on PPE at the beginning, but others have been are still very relevant. You're welcome to go and look at those. I think a major concern for everyone, I was talking to Hannah about this the other day, is the well-being of anaesthetists of all grades, and I'll talk a little bit more specifically about trainees in a minute. But the risk of people becoming burnt out, not having time for to de-stress, not having time to recuperate, testing their resilience to the full remains. And it's hard to know exactly where, where the governments are on this. And I'm not suggesting by that they don't care. I think they definitely do, but they're also trying to balance, as we know, keeping everything going, by which for us means some of the elective surgery, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. We've produced some guidance with the Royal Medical Benevolent Fund at the beginning of the pandemic. There's vital signs documents. The trainee wellbeing campaign continues, and in fact, the Fight Fatigue campaign last night won an award for in the Workforce and Wellbeing Team of the Year. So congratulations to them. That was a joint initiative between the Royal College, ourselves, and FICM, and that has been a really successful campaign and will continue for a little bit longer. And there are other campaigns we've got, such as Coffee and a Gas and Knock It Out, which is the anti-bullying campaign we're doing in conjunction with surgeons. And those resources are also available on the website, and some of those will be updated again soon, giving new signposts for resources that have become available since this initial document was put together. So where are we now, COVID-19 and getting back to normal? Where are we in terms of the elective work? Where are we in terms of preparing for the next, or the current wave, perhaps I should say now, the one that we're just entering? So just to take you through a few current issues that are going ahead. So the first is the government's plans for enhanced care. This is one of the things that's changed very recently. Enhanced care, a fairly simple idea. It's about providing something between ward-based care and HDU care. And in the context of COVID and where we are now, it has been suggested this would be a way of maintaining elective surgery, because many of the patients who undergo elective surgery and may need care of greater acuity than that provided on the wards would previously have waited for an HDU bed, or in some hospitals an ICU bed, but they are likely to be stretched again by the next wave, or the current wave. So a concept that had already been developed about enhanced care was therefore brought forward as an answer to keeping, or part of the solution of keeping elective care going. I suppose one of the analogies at Queen's may be either the trauma unit on C30 or the neurosurgical post-op unit, but in fact the care would be slightly higher acuity than that. For example, it might include patients who were receiving one vasopressor to manage a predictable period of hypotension due to an epidural, or it might be patients who require closer respiratory monitoring. Those are available on a ward, perhaps those with OSA and a CPAP machine. So the immediate thought the anaesthetists might have is, well, who the hell is going to provide that care? Who's going to deliver it? Is it going to be as another job for anaesthetists to do? And I'm aware that a similar proposal, NUH, fell back a few years ago when the anaesthetic department felt it couldn't support an enhanced care or a prolonged recovery type unit for that very reason. So NHSEN set up at the beginning of the summer groups looking at how to deliver enhanced care by September, noted by September, and we were represented on groups looking at workforce and at policies and standards, where there were other groups looking at data, estates, finance. So a very ambitious date for implementation by September. And one of the workforce predictions that I was told at the beginning of that was that to deliver elective care over the winter, when another surge was being predicted, would require 40,000 more nurses and 10,000 more doctors. And we think, where are they coming from? They can't all just be returnees coming back from retirement. And there is no obvious answer to that. Having seen the plans were less ambitious in the sense that the requirement for anaesthetists wasn't as acute as we feared. In fact, the plan would be that the majority of the care would be delivered by the patient's home surgical team, although I think most anaesthetists would say, yeah, but we know the anaesthetist is still going to get called when the epidural doesn't work, or the fluids aren't right, or the lines need changing, or whatever. What I can say that as of information I received yesterday, that I don't think this project is going to be, what's the right word, is going to be promoted particularly by NHSE, and is more likely to be promoted by some of the specialist societies. And I don't know the background to why that is, why NHSE now feel that they can't support it themselves, but it's still hope that the profession will introduce enhanced care units to help deliver elective care. This is just an example to show you what is going on elsewhere, and this is more really for the surgeons rather than for us. The surgeons are being asked to validate their surgical waiting lists to make sure that patients should still be on those lists, or whether they can be removed. Either because the operation's still not needed, well, that seems slightly surprising, because why did you get on the list in the first place? Or maybe, and more likely, patients have a different concept of the risk-benefit analysis, given the risks that we know are associated with surgery during a COVID pandemic. So there is a plan that all patients will be contacted and will be talked through their options to see if they want to remain on the waiting list. We have some concerns around whether patients will be suitably supported as they make those decisions, but undoubtedly this is what will happen over the next few weeks and months by our surgical colleagues. So where are we with workforce? Where are we going to get these extra 10,000 new doctors? Where are we going to get the nurses, indeed, and all the other allied health professions to deliver the care, both just for the next bit of the pandemic generally, and secondly, if we do in any way manage to keep the elective services running, should the pandemic be as bad or almost as bad as last time, and its impact on, for example, ICU and wards and EDs. And there is no doubt in my mind that part of the solution, and it is of course only part of the solution that the government envisaged in relation to anaesthesia, is around the development numbers of anaesthesia associates, so previously known as physician's assistants in anaesthesia, but now known as anaesthesia associates. And as you probably are aware, the GMC were given the role of regulating the anaesthesia associates in the future. This is without doubt the one Marmite subject in anaesthesia. There's clearly a really committed group of people who think we should not have anaesthesia associates anywhere. This is a threat to the profession, it's a threat to our livelihoods. It will replace us in the same way that anaesthetists feel threatened by CRNAs in America, for example. There are others who have embraced the concept, who work with anaesthesia associates, who find them a great part of the anaesthetic team in delivering care, and can see the different roles anaesthesia associates can play in terms of pre-op assessment, post-op care, theatre-based care, relieving people, allowing training opportunities, and developing services themselves. For example, insertion of lines, as George was just talking about a few minutes ago. So, and then there's a middle group of people who can go with it and don't feel strongly either way. So the GMC think that the legislation to allow regulation of anaesthesia associates will be in place by the end of next year, so by the end of 2021. The legislative process takes about 12 months, and they will start consulting on it just after Christmas, and the Department of Health and Social Care will start consulting on the legislation just before Christmas. We took a pragmatic view that it was better for us to be involved on the inside of the tent looking out rather than the outside of the tent looking in, despite the fact that some of our members will be very opposed to anything to do with anaesthesia associates. So we are represented on working groups that are looking at fitness to practice proceedings, the curriculum, education, revalidation. And most of that work is yet to start because they're still concentrating on the legislation. A draft curriculum was released a short while ago by the college and has been circulated. I haven't looked at it myself, but one of my colleagues who teaches an Anaesthesia Associates course in the North East has looked at it and said it's actually a very comprehensive and useful document. So, and as I say, this is not the only solution, but undoubtedly the government see this as part of the solution for anaesthesia, and that has only been heightened by COVID, by the stress that anaesthesia departments were under, particularly in some parts of the country, as we know, in March and April, and by the requirement to have a different type of workforce that can hopefully keep some of the elective service going as well. I'm sure there'll be strong views even amongst this audience in Nottingham, despite the fact that we have worked very successfully with Anaesthesia Associates. Many of us have worked very successfully with Anaesthesia Associates. I'm very happy to hear your thoughts, particularly on this topic. I think the COVID pandemic has brought to light many other issues, hasn't it? Just as an example, only because it's quite close to my heart, is around sustainability, and particularly the issues of supply chain with PPE and drugs that's been highlighted. We're told that the government now has a much more resilient supply chain and also has stored up the relevant drugs and PPE. I suspect that will only be tested properly should this current wave develop to the same extent of the last one, and we need those drugs and those PPE to be delivered. But I'm sure we don't have any particular insights currently of where we are with either PPE or drugs. As you know, the main issue with drugs was, from an anaesthetic point of view, was around propofol and whether there was enough propofol to go round. And even some of my die-hard Tiva colleagues in fact had to envisage switching on a vaporizer at one point. I'm not sure they ever got that desperate, but we're considering it. I think the propofol issue particularly was probably not completely, but probably in part due to it being diverted to stock up the Nightingale hospitals. But we'll have to wait and see how the pandemic surge works out in terms of ICU this time. So where are we with training and CPD, CME? Well, I think we see that obviously it's a continuing need for it. We never get rid of the need for CPD and CME, as the name suggests, but for the foreseeable future, at least, it will be online only. So our trainee conference in 2020, which was being delivered by an ex-Nottingham trainee, Dick Burnham, was postponed and is happening next year. And our annual congress, which should have been a few weeks ago, was cancelled. And I don't know what the long-term future of physical meetings is. Have people now got so used to online learning, online education, that physical meetings will slowly wither away? I don't know. But I think the chances of publications becoming fully digital is likely to be quite soon. Anaesthesia is looking again at becoming a digital-only publication. We did do this for 3 months during the pandemic when our printers couldn't guarantee supply of printed material. And Anaesthesia Reports, our sister journal, is already online only. And I believe the BGA is also looking at this again. I think most of us are aware they had their fingers burnt a little bit about this. But of course, we've all moved on, both in terms of our wanting to embrace this, but also in terms of the technology to deliver digital publications is hugely better than it was 5, 10, 15 years ago. And our publishers, Wiley, are very keen that we move this, and in fact will give us a nice financial compensation should we move to an online only publication. I don't want to talk too much about training. I don't know if Ravi's on this call, but and this is not in any way to criticise the college for the position they found themselves in. It's just to highlight it that it's an ongoing problem, particularly now that ST3 recruitment round has opened again. And I think there's still some issues with the website. We know that also there was some worries about how the exams have been prioritised in the statement from the college over the summer. And a lot of people are aware of the problems the college had with their primary FRCA a few weeks ago. And I think they've had a subsequent online exam that was received much better. A lot of these issues are no one's fault. These are just things which happen when you're in a moving situation. And I know the college have done a huge amount of work looking at the primary FRCA and making sure they don't run into the same problems. And they consulted with us and lots of other people. Congratulations to them for being so candid about this and being explaining it to trainees. So I only show you this slide because you may recognise not the face at the top left, but the face towards the bottom on the right. An ex-Nottingham consultant, John Ward, has now been elected as an officer of the association. He's the honorary treasurer-elect. John's based down on the south coast. Nottingham's pretty well represented otherwise now in national bodies. Let me show you. There you are. There's a face at the back you may recognise who used to be on the trainee committee but has now left, of course, because he went to overseas and now back but has left the trainee committee. Rob Fleming is on the board of directors of the association as well. And we have one local representative on the trainee committee, but one name who used to be local, so everyone will know Will. But Naomi Freeman was a trainee in Nottingham until she moved to Scotland a couple of years ago. And they're both on the trainee committee. If I go back, there is a problem. There aren't many women left involved in the association. A couple have left the board at this last change of the board in September. It's an issue we take extremely seriously, as do lots of other organisations. And we have appointed an equality and diversity lead, and we are always looking to encourage women to apply to join the board, and women to apply and we're always looking to make our meetings, the faculty of our meeting is representative of our delegates, so an equal split in speakers and faculty members. We're looking at diversity within our own organisation, and having looked at gender, we're now widening that out to some of the other protected characteristics. And we're working nationally with other organisations and internationally on diversity. It's something we take very seriously, and I'm not in any way immune to the issue that people would say, well, the board currently is very male dominated. It is, and we're doing what we can to encourage that people to apply and for that to change in the future. It is an ongoing issue. So it's a little bit, Rob, of a mixed bag there of some updates. It is, as I said at the beginning, a rather personal collection of thoughts, and there are other issues that I'm happy if people want to ask me about.